Blog Talk Radio.
On this edition of Sports Drive Live, Melky Cabrera is now among the likes of Alex Rodriguez and Barry Bonds, and not for the right reasons. The Red Sox continue to embarrass themselves, and the MLB season really starts to heat up. All that and more coming up next. Good evening, sports fans, and welcome to Sports Drive Live on this Wednesday, August 15th, 2012. I'm Brian Vanup alongside Gershon Rabinowitz, and we will be going a half-hour this evening discussing breaking news on Melky Cabrera and the ongoing turmoil in Boston. As always, remember this show is all about you, the listener, so call in and let us know what you think. 646-649-1921 is the number to do so, and let's get started. So, Gershon, what a shocking day in baseball. San Francisco Giants outfielder Melky Cabrera has been suspended 50 games for using testosterone, a type of performance-enhancing drug. The MLB leader in hits, batting average, and this year's AllStar Game MVP has now ruined his reputation and the future of his career. At the same time, however, he's just another name added to the long list of cheaters during this never-ending steroid era. Gershon, what are your thoughts on this?
I was completely shocked. I don't know how else to describe it. Melky Cabrera is the first player to be suspended for performance-enhancing drugs since his teammate Guillermo Mota did on May 7, 2012. And Melky, you never thought of that guy. You always saw him as that chubby guy, at times would lose his head a little bit on the field, but he was always that lovable guy that would get big hits and produce for his team. And you saw that he was starting to figure out the game of baseball and really enter his prime, as you saw with the Royals last year, hit over 300. And then this year, leading the league in hits, leading the league in average, was the All-Star MVP. And then sometimes, that they say, the old cliche, if it's too good to be true, if it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. And that's what it really seemed like for Melky Cabrera over the last 2 years.
Yeah, and Gershon, I was totally shocked too. I couldn't believe it when you told me. We didn't expect to do a show today, of course, but this news is just too big not to discuss. I just couldn't believe it because, as you said, Melky was he didn't seem like a guy who would ever, take steroids. It wasn't technically steroids, but, there was no sign of him getting a smaller head or bigger muscle like other steroid users have. He just seemed like a guy who, simply got his act together, got in shape, and it was finally all paying off for him. But, I was a big Melky fan, but I don't see how anyone supports him after this.
Well, in San Francisco, they feel betrayed. And I think a lot of Major League Baseball fans do because they just saw the All-Star Game about a month ago, and Melky Cabrera was the MVP of that game, and now the National League has home field advantage in the World Series. And I'm not going to say it totally has to do with the way Melky Cabrera played, but he did play a key part of it. And I don't know how you feel about it now that the National League has home field advantage in the World Series, but does this change things for the Commissioner's office in selecting home field for the World Series maybe next year and the coming years?
I think I've always had a problem with how the All-Star Game was played, how it decided home field advantage for the World Series. To me, it just had no relation. It made no sense to me. But now with this, I think there's no doubt. Bud Selig, he has to at least rethink his strategy. This could change the whole season. You don't think about it that much because you don't think how one player could ever change the outcome of a whole season. But Melky Cabrera has made that possibility. The National League has home field advantage, and we've seen in the last 30 World Series, I don't know the exact stat, but more than 80% of teams who had home field advantage won the World Series. And who knows that if Melky didn't play in this game, if he wasn't an All-Star, if the lineup wasn't arranged it was around Melky Cabrera, the game could have gone a different way. No, I know the American League just flat out didn't perform, but Melky Cabrera, it's just unbelievable. And how now, not only does he affect the Giants team, but he possibly affects the outcome of this year's World Series.
And he does affect that Giant team, and they have to figure out ways to replace him. The San Francisco Giants right now, they don't have a lot of outfielders on their roster. This was announced a half hour before their game against the Washington Nationals, and you find out, number one, you have to face Steven Strasburg. That's always a daunting task, especially now that you have Tim Lincecum, who hasn't performed to a level that we're used to or accustomed to seeing. And then You find out a half hour before the game, Melky Cabrera is not going to be in your lineup, add insult to injury, and you got to start Gregor Blanco in left field. Plus, you don't have Aubrey Huff. Huff's been battling knee problems, so you can't put Brandon Bell in left field, moving from first base, and then have Huff at first. You can't do that. They probably will have to call up Justin Christian. I don't know if they're going to pick up anybody, let's say, in the waiver wire. There are guys out there. I mean, I've been mentioning to you, jokingly, maybe Jason Bay might be an option, but, you know, I don't know what the Giants could do at this point. Melky Cabrera, remember, he could be back if the Giants do advance the National League Championship Series. It will be a 50-game suspension, so we'll miss the remainder of the regular season and perhaps about 4 or 5 games of the divisional series.
Yeah, and of course that's all considering if San Francisco makes it. They're in good shape right now, but it's going to be a big loss without Melky. And, you know, I really look at this. I was thinking about this. It's a very different situation for, I think, past suspensions and past performance-enhancing drug users because, you know, you think of guys, you know, the notable guys who took PEDs, you know, Mark McGwire, Barry Bonds, Alex Rodriguez. They all were superstars. They all had haters. They all played on big-name teams that a lot of people despised. But Melky Cabrera, it seemed like everyone in baseball loved this story of how he's come back and how he's had such a great season, has really turned it on. You know, last year in Kansas City and, of course, this year in San Francisco, it just seems like no one could have suspected him of doing this. And, I mean, you could have always suspected the actual users, A-Rod and those guys. But Melky Cabrera, it's a total shock, and I just can't believe it. As a Yankee fan, you know, how great he was for the Yankees in 2009, and as just a baseball fan in general, the steroid era continues to revive itself, and it really has never ended, and who knows when it will end.
And you want it to end. You feel like that you want that steroid era to end and that dark cloud to finally pass Major League Baseball. I mean, we're in an era where baseball has never thrived like this. I mean, you have the MLB network, which started a couple of years ago. Fans could easily buy tickets over StubHub to go to as many games as they want to. Fans could watch their home team. Let's say they move out to the West Coast and they want to watch the Yankees. They could do that on MLB.tv. They could follow their players in fantasy. They could play their video games. They could do all these different things. And fans are more knowledgeable than they were ever before. And it's a time when you want to promote the game of baseball for what it is. And you have the new CBA out, and now it's getting some competitive balance. You could say what you want about the playoff system. That's a playoff system with the one-game playoff, but now more teams have an opportunity to make the postseason. And now this comes, again, performance-enhancing drugs. We talked about it with Ryan Braun a couple of months ago. And we went into the whole thing, whether he was guilty or whether he was not. And now, once again, another high-profile player comes under that dark cloud, and that's Melky Cabrera. And I don't know if this makes me a little bit detached or disillusioned from baseball, but I know for some fans that do not follow the game as closely as we do, for them it might, and it might discourage them from watching Major League Baseball.
I completely agree. That's a great point because baseball really has grown and has gained a larger audience than, you know, say 10, 15 years ago. And, I mean, it's just, it's a great point. You know, I don't think I'm ever going to stop loving baseball, but hearing these type of stories and hearing how the faces of baseball are cheaters and the guys who, little kids right now are emulating, you know, Ryan Braun's stance or Melky Cabrera's stance or you know, pretending to be John Sterling saying the milkman delivers. You know, these are people that kids and a whole generation of baseball fans look up to, and I think that they all cheated their way to success, and then ultimately they look like complete idiots. It's just so discouraging, and it really is. I'm sure a lot of baseball fans are going to hang their heads, and probably a lot of Giants fans are promising to never wear a Melky Cabrera shirt again. It's just so shocking because Melky is probably the last person next to, I'd say, Derek Jeter, the only player in Major League Baseball who I think we all can agree hasn't taken PEDs. But, you know, we never thought Melky did. We never thought Ryan Braun would. But here we are now, and the steroid era continues.
And we talked about the postseason. And now let's talk about some of the postseason awards. Melky Cabrera is still eligible to win the batting title. Now, you might question what I just said because Melky Cabrera only has 501 at-bats. He's one at-bat short from normally qualifying with 502. Going into play here on August 15th, Cabrera trails Andrew McCutchen by 13 percentage points for the National League lead in the batting title. In the event that Cabrera is leading the league in the end of the season, 1 out would be added to his totals in order to get him up to the necessary number of plate appearances. If he's still leading after that, he would be the batting champion. It's happened before twice in the National League, once in 81 and once in 96. So it is theoretically possible for Melky Cabrera to serve the suspension and still win the batting title. Wouldn't that appall you if that does come to fruition, Brian?
It would completely. It would be disgusting because you're basically, it's like giving an admitted cheater the award. You know, it's just like that principle is just not right. And granted, that rule, it definitely works for other situations. If there's like we mentioned some scenarios before we went on. Let's say a veteran, a hardworking, great player is hitting 350 and he's injured for the rest of the season. Yeah, you want to keep him in that batting title race. There are some deserving people who haven't played full seasons who have ended up winning awards. Like you said, Tony Gwynn Jr. Before winning the batting title. It's just there are certain times where this rule works perfectly. But if that happened and Melky Cabrera won the batting title but sitting on the bench for the last 50 games of the year, not even sitting on the bench, probably not even allowed in the ballpark. Who knows?
Well, he's suspended without pay for 50 games, so I don't know. I mean, he probably could buy a ticket if he wanted to at AT&T Park, but I don't think he's going to have any contact with the team.
Right. I mean, exactly. It would be just horrible, and I don't see how MLB could keep that rule because how many admitted steroid users there's been in the past decade and 2 decades almost now. I mean, how could you give a chance to a suspended player to win any awards? Because they clearly don't deserve it.
Well, at least not for 2012. I mean, we don't know how long the steroid use has gone on for, and you'll never know in the steroid era about guys that were never caught. There were guys that took steroids when steroids were not illegal in Major League Baseball, and some of these over-the-counter supplements you would easily be able to find in GNC. And a lot of times that happened like after the strike and also in the late 80s when you saw guys starting to bulk up and home runs starting to go out of the ballpark at an alarming rate. So, I mean, you never know. I mean, so I guess you're guilty before you're proven innocent. I mean, it's a backwards way of thinking, but that's usually how you have to think in Major League Baseball, and you have to suspect people. Does that mean you have to go on a witch hunt and start just guessing guys, oh, this guy bulked up, he went from hitting 25 home runs, this year he's hitting 45, that means he took steroids? No, I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that if there is that cloud of suspicion out there, usually he's guilty.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. You're right, and it's just to a point where how can you keep playing baseball suspecting all these players could be cheaters and there's no really absolute solution to this. There really is no possible way to completely abolish all steroid users, to catch all steroid users. It's impossible, and it's sick because there are cheaters out there, former players and maybe even current players, who are continuing to live the life that many people dream of and be millionaire baseball players when, for the most part, they may not even have earned it. You've heard of players who have been studs in high school and college and who were high draft picks, and they already had the raw talent, and then they started juicing, which makes completely no sense to me, and it seems like a lot of players have done that. It's just a horrible idea, performance-enhancing drug users, and I mean, it's in every sport, but baseball just seems like every day. I mean, if you don't follow baseball a lot, you'd think you'd hear a steroid admission story almost every day, and it's just a horrible situation. And I mean, I wish the Giants the best. And as for Melky Cabrera, I hope he just admit, he made a mistake and move on and try to find another team or get back with the Giants and just try to do it the right way, do it the natural way, because he definitely had talent before. Let's see if he can keep on doing it without taking drugs.
And one thing that you were mentioning about these steroid users, one thing you got to also keep in mind that not every steroid user was a superstar. Some of these steroid users actually they took roids to actually heal from injuries or to just stay in the big leagues. I've read about different stories about different backup catchers out there that took steroids just to stay in the league and deal with the physical punishment they have to take, blocking balls behind the plate, thumb injuries, collisions, you name it. and they took roids just to be able to maintain that so their job doesn't get taken from a minor league player or by a minor league player. And that's what happens. The guys that take steroids, they take jobs away from players that are deserving in the minor leagues that might never get an opportunity, guys that might be those quad A guys, which means that they're not good enough for the major leagues, but they're too good for AAA. So what does that say for their careers? And then they might never get that opportunity back. I mean, think about that. Guys that played in the late 90s and the early 2000s, guys that maybe were not big home run hitters or power hitters. And this thing, I mean, has just resonated around Major League Baseball today. You have all the comments out here, the Players Association. Here was a statement on behalf of Melky Cabrera from the Players Association in Major League Baseball. My positive test was the result of my use of a substance I should not have used. I accept my suspension on the joint drug program, and I will try to move on with my life. I'm deeply sorry for my mistake, and I apologize to my teammates, the San Francisco Giants organization, and to the fans for letting them down. The San Francisco Giants released a statement after learning about Cabrera's suspension. We were extremely disappointed to learn the suspension of Melky Cabrera for violating Major League Baseball's Joint Drug Prevention and Treatment Program. We fully support Major League Baseball's policy and its efforts to eliminate performance-enhancing drugs from our game. Per the protocol outlined by Major League Baseball's collective bargaining agreement, the Giants will not comment further on this matter. So before his suspension was announced, as we mentioned, Cabrera was leading all major leaguers with 159 hits. What do you think of those statements that were released by the Players Association and by San Francisco regarding the matter with Cabrera?
I mean, those statements, I mean, what else can they really say? I mean, it's just, you don't want to talk too much about it because you don't want it to completely take over the team and the state of the team. I'm sure Giants players and the fans, and I'm sure Bruce Bochy is going to talk to them tonight and just say, move on, forget it. He's out of the clubhouse. That's the type of manager I think he is. The statements are, Melky Cabrera, it's just like each sentence is, no duh. I used a substance I should not have used. Of course not, I mean, these statements are made because they kind of have to be made, but to me they're not made with much thought. And, the Giants said they're not going to comment on it anymore, which, I mean, is a good thing, but it's also a bad thing because now you can't, maybe publicly talk about what was going on in the clubhouse. You never know what could have been going on. And, you just hope that this can just be resolved, and hopefully Melky's AllStar Game performance, and it was a great performance, doesn't have any effect on this year's playoffs, because clearly a couple months ago it seemed that it would, and seemed that everything was going right for him.
And San Francisco has to move on from a baseball standpoint. We talked about getting another bat. They have to probably get another guy in the outfield to fill the void left by Cabrera. Can that bat solidify that offense? There's been so many times where the Giants have struggled to score runs behind their starting staff, which is one of the best in the National League. One thing you also got to remember about Melky, he played the majority of his career with the New York Yankees, and the Yankees had a number of thoughts. Players that played with Cabrera on that 2009 World Championship team, and I can't stress that enough, how well he played during the postseason that year, and second-best hitter behind Alex Rodriguez during the postseason. And just, I guess that goes through my mind a lot, thinking about it, that as a Yankee fan personally, that I was a Melky Cabrera fan, and just how he endeared himself. We talked about it. And to all the New York fans and all the fans out there, and then you find out this news, it was like a bombshell when it happened. And I think it was the same way because of how the players reacted. And the first guy you always want to hear from is Derek Jeter. And these were Derek Jeter's quotes to Sweeney Murdy of WFAN, who's the Yankee beat reporter. I'm surprised. It goes without saying. I feel bad. I feel bad to even be sitting here talking about it. So Jeter sounds like he's distraught about that. Then he went on to say, he was fun to be around. I enjoyed playing with him. I enjoyed watching him get better throughout the years. Yeah, it's too bad, Jeter said. Remember, Cabrera and Cano were probably the closest of friends during their time, right before Cabrera was traded to the Braves. Cano, he spoke about his sadness, and he said, he was having a great year. He's my friend. I'm going to be there for him. It's a sad day. I'm 100% surprised. A-Rod also offered his support. And remember, we talked about A-Rod taking these steroids. A-Rod said, I'm sure he's sad and confused. He's a young man, and he has a great opportunity and a challenge to turn a negative into a positive. A-Rod knows that better than anybody, because remember that he came out and he admitted that he did take steroids in 2009, then he rehabbed from the knee surgery, everything he had to deal with that off season, and he put it together, had a fantastic year for the Yankees. Now, A-Rod goes on to say, I'm a believer, I'm a friend, and at times like this, I'm not going to turn my back. I'm 100% here to support him. The last statement from the Yankees came from manager Joe Girardi, and he simply said, I'm disappointed. Obviously, Melky means a lot to us. And, of course, he's referring to the 2009 World Championship. So you see that there's still that adoration and love for Melky Cabrera within the Yankee clubhouse, where he spent all those years with many of those teammates. And I think that they're just as shocked as the fans of Major League Baseball and everybody around this whole situation.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And just one last piece of information before we move on. This is kind of breaking news. According to Hank Schulman, the Giants are tentatively scheduled to visit Yankee Stadium next year during interleague play. It'll be the first time San Francisco traveled the Bronx, or the second time in the last 50 years. And if Melky does return, that'll be a very interesting series, or maybe even a couple of series, of course, because of the new interleague play setup.
Yeah, that would be fun. It's going to be different when interleague play comes next year. But I think we should just, move on and discuss about the Boston Red Sox. A big bombshell within their clubhouse was released yesterday as the Red Sox, they staged a mutiny to try to get Bobby Valentine fired. This was right on their off day, a day before they faced the New York Yankees in a 3-game series at Yankee Stadium. It was one of those closed-door meetings in a hotel where it was led by Dustin Pedroia and Adrian Gonzalez, and they met along with some of the players with Ben Cherington and John Henry in the ownership about having Bobby Valentine be dismissed. The Red Sox are still steadfast to the organization about not firing Bobby Valentine, but you still see once again they had Terry Francona, that he got fired, the players supported him. Now Bobby Valentine's in there. He doesn't mesh with the Red Sox philosophies, and so far, and it hasn't meshed well on the field as well, as the Red Sox continue to be playing under 500 baseball, and it just continues to be one soap opera after another with the Boston Red Sox.
Yeah, and Gershon, I mean, it's just flat out pathetic, to be honest. Bobby V may not be the best fit in Boston, but, he's not the problem to me. The problem's with the players. The players, they don't choose managers and how they manage. This Red Sox team, excusing some players, it's just like all year they've been stuck up, meaty veterans who think what they say goes. Bobby V was supposed to go there and give the team a wake-up call and a kick and you-know-what, and the players are just brushing them off and thinking they know how to win without his instructions. That's clearly not the case. The Red Sox have every right to be angry with him and how they've played, but they can't go whining to the front office. Just flat out play the game and play it hard. Maybe they would have had a chance to turn it around and make themselves relevant down the stretch, but right now I just don't see it. It's just a horrible situation in Boston, and I don't know what else to say about that. It's just horrible.
Well, they flat out just want Bobby Valentine out there. I mean, all these guys, they supported Terry Francona and how he was encouraging and supportive to their careers, and they don't want Valentine there because he's a complete opposite guy. But remember, if they would have played well down the stretch, probably Francona would have been back this year. And here's the exact details of the Yahoo Sports article. You've got to read it. It was posted yesterday, and it keeps getting updated. The owners called the meeting on Boston's off day in New York, July 26th, as we mentioned. Adrian Gonzalez texted on the behalf of teammates and himself, airing the dissatisfaction for Bobby Valentine for embarrassing John Lester. Remember, he left him into that ball game against the Blue Jays where he allowed 11 runs on July 22nd. This is the latest in an incident of a season's worth of bad relations between the bubbling Red Sox players and Valentine. The tenor of the meeting at 2 o'clock at the Palace Hotel in New York turned ugly almost immediately, according to sources who Yahoo Sports granted anonymity because they were not authorized to speak about internal matters. So you see that you don't know who to blame. I mean, I think it is the players, but the manager's going to take the fall no matter what happens. Ownership is really being unwavering, but I would really be shocked if Valentine is back for 2013. I mean, this Red Sox team has a $173.2 million payroll, and they're 57 and 59 going into play tonight, 11 games behind the New York Yankees, and now 6.5 behind the second wild card position. The last time the Red Sox faced a season where they were under 500 was 1997. It would shock me if Bobby Valentine returns.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a bit of a shock, but I stress this a lot, and I really think he deserves a second chance, because you look at this team, and this team, it is the problem. It's not Bobby V, and as you said, score commander is going to take the fall. But what I'm trying to point out is that the Red Sox team hasn't been healthy all year. Their two aces have completely underperformed. I know their record is like 12 games under 500 combined. If they're at 500,
you mean for Beckett or Lester?
What?
I'm sorry. You mean for Beckett or Lester?
For Beckett and Lester combined,
yeah,
their records are under 500, and if they were at 500, they would be right there with the Yankees. It's scary. This team was good enough, healthy, and players performing the way they should to win this year too. And I feel like Bobby V did not get a full opportunity to manage the team the way he wants to manage it, to manage a team that has been constructed in his view. I think the Red Sox are going through not a huge rebuilding stage, but I think that you're looking at trading Lester or trading Beckett, trading at least one of those guys, trying to get some pitching in, trying to get some prospects in, because right now their farm system right now is pretty dry, except for Middlebrooks coming up, and Pedro Siriaco, of course. But, you know, the Red Sox right now, I think they need to make a lot of changes. I don't think Bobby Valentine is that change they need to make, because he is a great manager, in my opinion. Not a great manager, but a manager that knows how to fire his team up and how to inspire them. I know he hasn't had that much success, but I'd give him another chance, because I think this year is just a lost year for the Red Sox, no matter who is going to manage.
I'll agree and disagree with you with many of those points. I mean, you mentioned about trading Beckett or Lester. What value could you get for Beckett or Lester? I mean, Lester is underachieved. He's starting to pitch a little bit better, so maybe you could trade him in the offseason. But Josh Beckett, he had another stinker last night as he faced the Orioles. They lost 7-1, and he gave up 7 runs in that start, only lasted about 5 innings. What can you really get for him? And you mentioned that the Red Sox really don't have any prospects in their system. Xander Bogaerts is their top prospect, a shortstop, 19 years of age. And the Red Sox are trying to combat that problem by finding a shortstop. Since they traded Hanley away, they have him, Matt Barnes, a 22-year-old pitcher. Jackie Bradley's an outfielder. LaVarnway they called up after they traded Shopping to the Mets yesterday. So they do have pieces. The Red Sox do have some guys in the minor league system. But also the Red Sox, they battled some injuries this year. Ellsbury missed a lot of time. You had Crawford, which was a bad contract to begin with. Lackey's been out for the year with Tommy John surgery. Dice K has not been pitching most of the year because also he's battled injuries in his final season with the Red Sox, perhaps. So the Red Sox are a mess. I mean, they have to just tear this thing apart. I mean, look at the American League East. They have improved. You have Manny Machado coming up for the Baltimore Orioles. The Orioles under Showalter have played fantastic baseball. The Yankees are always a threat. You have the Tampa Bay Rays, who are becoming a perennial threat. So the American League East, the Red Sox could get lost in the shuffle if they don't solve this thing in the offseason, find a stable manager, and get players that are in here that are a winning attitude. I don't understand, for instance, why they traded Marco Scutaro last offseason. He was one of those players that would have that type of attitude and be able to play the game on the line, make plays, do what he's supposed to do. And the Red Sox don't have enough of those type of gamers and grinders in their lineup and in the clubhouse. And I think that that's one of the main problems in Boston.
I think you're definitely right on a lot of those points. You know, and I do agree that, I mean, I don't think they should go into complete rebuilding mode because, like you said, they have pieces on the team and in the minor leagues, you know, who have a chance to make an impact. And I think healthy, this team was at least an 85-win team. I feel confident in a healthy Red Sox team. But, you know, as the show wraps up, I mean, we just agree that the Red Sox are a mess and they need to do a lot of things to get back in contention. And just want to say quickly, rest in peace, Johnny Pesky. What a great player he was. And for now, I'm going to let Gershon close out the show by letting you know about one of the best New York sports talk shows right now on the Internet.
And before we put a bow on this one, do us a favor and check out New York Sports Chat on Spreaker Radio, hosted by Yankers09. You can follow him on Twitter at TheYankers09. Yankers09 breaks down everything you need to know about New York sports. He'll be joining Blog Talk Radio real soon, so follow him on Twitter. Check him out. You won't be disappointed, but you will be disappointed to learn that we are out of time on this edition of Sports Drive Live. For this intense edition of Sports Drive Live, for Brian and our entire crew, Gershon checking out. Time to say goodbye. We will talk to you soon.